Texas, Oklahoma, they're out of the Big 12. They're heading to the SEC. Kind of makes the Big 12 not so much a Power 5 school anymore. So what conference should become the next Power 5 school? How about we just make our own? That's what we're doing today, right here on Convince Me. Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode number 60 of Convince Me. I am Andy Rutherford, joined, as always, by Mr. Brian Bennett, Mr. Casey Elrod. Gentlemen, how goes it?
Rut, I don't know about you, but I have teams beating down my door trying to get my conference. You hear that? They're already beating down my door.
I got your cat.
Oh.
You know what? You know how I feel? I feel hot and I feel tired. I'm glad that we're almost done with July. I'm ready for something like October. It's cooler weather. You've got, bonfires and hay rides. You've got scary movies, Halloween. And the best thing of all, in October, we have college football.
I'd say
we're one step closer.
I'd say postseason baseball, but college football is pretty sweet too.
Nobody watches baseball anymore. What are you talking about?
Sure they do. But we're not talking about it today. We're talking football. Obviously, the biggest news in sports over the last week. Really, surprisingly, kind of hasn't been the Olympics. There's been a lot more coverage given to what we're kind of talking about today. But before we get into that, let's get into our weekly shill. I'll keep it short and sweet. Make sure you're following us on all of our socials. Facebook.com/Convince Me Show, Twitter @ConvinceMeShow, Instagram Convince Me Show, and of course our YouTube page, tinyurl.com/Convince Me Show. And of course we are a podcast. So everywhere you listen to your favorite podcast, you can find us there. If we're not there, let us know. We'll do what we can to get there. And then the month's wrapping up. It's getting close to the end. Head over podcastawards.com. Make sure you register. There's a link right there on the homepage where you can register to nominate. When you do that, you're going to look under the People's Choice category. There's going to be a little button you can click beside Convince Me. You're going to go to the entertainment category. There's a little button you can click beside Convince Me. Click both of those buttons. Make sure you submit it. The other categories, pick your other favorite podcasts. This isn't all about us. It's about us and all the other podcasts that aren't in our categories. The ones that aren't in our categories, bleh. But, make sure you're heading over there. Time is running out, so make sure you get over there, get that done. Again, podcastawards.com. That may be the quickest weekly shill I've ever done, gentlemen.
I like it. Short and sweet.
We got a lot to get to today. So this is kind of off format from what we usually do. And to be kind of honest, it's a little convoluted. But it'll be fun once we get it going.
Whoa. Whose idea was this? Tell the audience. Isn't this like the third week in a row we've used my idea? How about that? This is my idea.
Actually, I would say it's my idea. You had the general premise and I got the details.
Yeah, but give me some love.
And the week before that was 100% Bennett's idea. And the week before that, I don't even remember what that show was. But yeah, those 3 weeks in a row, you had the premise for one show, and now you think you run this place.
I do. I'm in total control.
So, all right. As we said at the top of the show, in the cold open, Texas and Oklahoma, they're defecting. They're telling the Big 12 bye-bye. They want to go where the money is. They want to go to the SEC, Super Conference. Here we come. But then we got to thinking, the Big 12 really doesn't really count as a Power 5 conference anymore. They just lost their two biggest dogs, and some would say they're only real dogs, especially when it comes to football. But this goes beyond football. So today, myself and Mr. Elrod are each going to build our own power conference, consisting of teams from the remnants of the Big 12 and all other schools not in one of the other Power 5 conferences. So SEC schools, ACC, Big 10, and Pac 12, those are set. We're not touching those schools, but everybody else is up for grabs. Myself and Mr. Elrod, we're going to build ourselves a conference, and Mr. Bennett's going to choose which one is better once all is said and done. Bennett, what are your thoughts heading into it?
I'm intrigued. I just now got the details of this like 5 minutes before we started, so I'm intrigued to see how you guys draft these teams and like how y'all are going to make these conferences really work. So this will be interesting. I'm ready to dive in.
Good deal. In a minute, we're going to tell you all our strategies and our mindsets before we start our selection process. But Bennett, once we do start that selection process, I'm sure you've got some way to figure out who gets first dibs.
I do. See, I figured that since the talk of the town is Texas and Oklahoma, our coin toss would have something to do with Texas and Oklahoma. I hope you have pen and paper or something of the sort, some sort of writing instrument. We do. We're good. All right. Now, last October, 2020, Texas and Oklahoma squared off in what would be an instant classic in the college football world in what's known as the Red River Showdown. These two teams, it took 4 overtimes to settle a winner. I would like to know, what is the total number of points scored in the Texas versus Oklahoma football game of last year? October 2020. I think it was October 6th, actually. It was 4 overtimes, crazy game. Closest, without going over, if you both go over, then we'll just end the show right here.
Okay, I'm in for the win.
Elrod is in for the win.
I don't remember.
Rut is thinking.
Yeah, I don't remember, but we'll go with it.
116.
116.
117.
117. All right, you both went over, so
Yes.
The show's over. It was actually 53-45. Oklahoma won, so it's a total of 98 points. Very, very high scoring game, but I guess it would be with 4 overtimes.
Yeah.
But Elrod, congratulations, you've won. You can elect to go first, or
I want the first pick.
You want the first pick?
Yes.
All right. Well, before we get into the first pick, tell me a little bit about, what's your strategy going into this? What kind of goals do you want to set for your conference? What's the mindset here going in?
Well, it seems to me that Oklahoma and Texas are making a decision now based purely on money, not really on anything else but a bigger television contract. So that is really the landscape in college athletics is changing because it's all being geared toward television contracts. So my conference is going to be geared toward maximizing the money. I really don't care about geography. I can go ahead and tell you that. I would like some natural rivals, but I really don't care if I could have teams from the southeast and northeast, northwest, southwest. I don't care. This is going to be a national conference. I've already got a conference name in play. It is the Pan Am Conference for all of our folks that watch the Hunger Games. It's Pan Am is the name of my conference. It could be anybody in the country. I'm going to have a token school for academics. So I'll throw a Vanderbilt in there. That adds really no value other than the athletic program. I can go ahead and tell you that. So my conference will be really geared toward maximizing the bottom line, but they could appear out of anywhere in the country.
That sounds like you put quite a bit into it. So definitely interested to see what teams you throw out there. Rut, you're not getting the first pick. You're going to go second, but then you'll go back to back. Does that alter your strategy going in, into this, or do you think you'll be all right?
I mean, in a sense, it's kind of a good thing. As I look at my draft board, so to speak, obviously the number one pick, it was a race for, I'm assuming it was a race for one school that Elrod just won, but that's okay. I won't spoil his big pick here in a minute, but that gives me a good way to go 2-3. And 2-3, I feel like there's 1A, and then I feel like there's 2A and 2B, and I get to get both of those. So that's a good thing. Much like Elrod, I would love to draft a conference that's kind of close geographically, but that's just not going to be plausible when you look at these list of schools that are free to be picked. If you do go completely geographically, your conference is not going to be that great. And let's be honest, the real conferences in the world today, geography is kind of out the window. It is about money. That is true, but money can come from a lot of different areas. It comes from championships. It comes from TV revenue, comes from fan bases willing to travel. And I do want to bring in, when you've got a fresh new conference, maybe some people think that tradition's out the window with this brand new thing. I do want to scoop up some schools here that bring quite a bit of tradition with them. So that's something I'll be looking at too. And I also want to make sure in the location of some of these schools I'm taking that I'm really getting a foothold and having some sort of presence in recruiting hotbeds. That's going to be something I'm looking at too, just to have some sort of presence there. Because obviously, if you get presence in those recruiting hotbeds, you get the good talent, and with the good talent comes the good competition, which comes the money. So yeah, I'm actually pretty excited to get this thing going. And before we let Elrod take his pick, I do just want to kind of explain to the people the very few rules we have in place here. This will be snake style, like most of our drafts are, but this show, the draft's only kind of part of the show. We're not going to be spending a lot of time explaining our draft picks, just a few seconds with each one. And each conference can have however many we want. It can have as little as 8 or as many as 16. If one of us feels like our conference is good where it is, and the other one still wants to add some more people, at that point, whoever's left, that person's just going to name their schools. And as far as rules go, that's about all we have. So
there are no rules.
No rules.
Right. We've got all the formalities out of the way. We're ready to get into the bread and butter of it. Elrod, you won. You get to go first. This shouldn't be a shocker, but lay it on me. What is your...
Well, I'm just going to totally disagree with Rod. He said that he has a 1A and a 1B. Are you kidding me?
I didn't say
there is
that.
one.
I said I
there
had
is
2A and 2B.
2A and 2B.
There is one program that is out there, Bennett, that even the SEC would admit tomorrow if they saw an invitation. And so would the ACC, the Pac-12, or the Big Ten. They sort of are in the ACC right now for half a season. But when you look at great brands in college athletics, one across the board gets a reaction kind of like the New York Yankees, kind of like any team from LA, like the Dodgers. It's Notre Dame. Notre Dame, South Bend, Indiana. What a coup for Pan Am Conference to get Notre Dame to start off their adds instant credibility to the conference. You have the Chicago market. South Bend's right next door to Chicago. We got a huge recruiting base up there. Notre Dame has its own network, pretty much. NBC broadcasts all their games. What they are not just a nationwide brand, they play games over in Ireland. They have fans that go everywhere across the country to watch them. A huge fan base. Good in men's basketball, women's basketball, they've won championships. Good across the board. Number one pick in the flagship of the Pan Am Conference, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
All right, I'm gonna have to regroup. That's not who I was expecting. I figured you were gonna take Tennessee Tech with the
Oh,
first pick, just
shock! The
because.
first shock of the night. I
I
did
mean,
not go with Tech.
because like just the intramurals alone, you know, top notch intramurals.
Yeah.
All right, but if you want Notre Dame, then hey, I'm not gonna stop you. All right, Rut, Notre Dame is off the board, but you've got back-to-back picks. So who are you taking number one in your conference?
Clarify. I said there was a 1 and then there was a 2A and a 2B.
You did.
And
I was paying attention.
and 2A and 2B is who I'm taking right here with these next two picks. The first one I'm going to pick was a team that, much like Notre Dame, was represented in or came close. So they received a few votes. Can't remember if they made a final bracket, but our schools that top to bottom, as far as across all athletics, who was the best school, we did that around March Madness time. And they are going to be my first pick out of the remnants of the Big 12. I'm taking Baylor here with my first pick. Women's basketball, men's basketball. Occasionally they mess around and have a good football team. They bring a little bit of tradition with them. And again, these conferences aren't just football. Like I said, Baylor's well represented on the basketball court. They're represented pretty well. They're a decent baseball team. And they kind of bring in a little bit of tradition with them. So I'm taking Baylor here at number 2, and at number 3, or my second pick, number 3 overall, I'm taking a team that has a lot of tradition with it, especially when it comes to the hardwood. The men's team, it's really good across the board. Vast majority of the time, the women's team, arguably the greatest of all time. I'm taking Connecticut, UConn here with my third pick. And I automatically, with Baylor and UConn, have one of the best women's basketball conferences in the country. So, like I said, they're decent for a Northeast baseball team. They're decent for a smaller Northeast football school. Really good on the gridiron. A lot of tradition there, or really good on the hardwood. A lot of tradition there already. So I'm going to take UConn there.
So Rut goes Baylor and UConn first two picks. It looks like he's starting to lock down the basketball schools early. Elrod, you took Notre Dame first. What is your second pick?
I'm also going to the remnants of the Big 12. One school that is rumored to go to the Pac-12 right now that might get an invitation before me, but I'm making the quick choice and going with the big money donor T. Boone Pickens and Oklahoma State. I'm getting the mullet. Oklahoma State adds Oklahoma City, it adds the entire Stillwater. It adds a huge television market to my conference. Men's basketball, their player Cade Cunningham is about to be the number 1 pick in the NBA draft. Football, they have last decade, they have been toe to toe with. If you have Oklahoma State's success in the last 10 years, overall, their record's better than Texas. So why not? Why is the SEC poaching Texas? It should be poaching Oklahoma State, which is my second pick in Pan Am.
So Elrod goes Notre Dame number 1 and OK State number 2. Two very well-rounded, solid choices there. So both of you guys have started out really good. These are huge schools here, just these first 4 taken. So it's going to be interesting to see from here on out how you guys go and how this shapes out. So should be pretty interesting.
That it should. And with that said, let's take a little break. Let's take a little breather. And let's get in a quick word from our sponsor. Guys, make sure you come back. Stay right here with us on the flip side of this little break, and we will be right back. And we are back. Bennett, lead us to where we go next, because I don't remember.
All right. So basically, to recap real quick. Each of y'all have drafted 2 picks. Elrod got us started with Notre Dame, the shocker, instead of taking Tennessee Tech. And then his second round pick was Oklahoma State. Rut, you went Baylor #1 and then turned right around and got UConn #2. So now we're ready for y'all's third picks, and Elrod will kick us off. What's your third pick?
Third pick, I'm sticking to the Midwest. If you want to be admitted to the Big Ten, you got to be in what's called AAU accredited, which is the American Association of Universities, which means you're a top research school. Nebraska, when they joined the Big Ten, was AAU accredited, but they have since lost their accreditation. So they could be going back down, being relegated like your Premier League. But one team that is rumored to go into the Big Ten and replace Nebraska, or maybe just a new member, is Kansas. Kansas is my next pick. He's loading up on the basketball schools. I need to go basketball for this pick. When you think of top-notch name brand programs in college basketball, nobody, if you do a top 5 list, if you do not put Kansas, you're doing it wrong. Household name, Kansas, you have an instant market in that area. So Notre Dame, Oklahoma State, and now Kansas, the Jayhawks, Rock Chop Jayhawk.
Yeah, that's a good pick. They're always in the running for, a basketball title like every year. So that definitely adds to your basketball schools here. All right. Rut, your third pick. You've got Baylor and UConn.
Kansas, definitely a good pick. They were 6th on my list, but 4 and 5 are actually still on my list as far as my draft board. So those will be my next 2 picks, both of which remnants of the Big 12. First one, I'm going with a good presence across all sports. They're also a good basketball program, at least men's. I'm not 100% sure how good their women are. I should probably pay more attention to women's basketball. They wouldn't win in my conference anyway because I got Baylor and UConn. But they're solid in basketball, solid most of the time in football. Really good school. They've bounced around conferences before, so it's nothing for them to jump again. But I'm bringing in West Virginia with my third pick. And then with my fourth pick, Bennett, I will satisfy you. I will bring in TTU, but not Tennessee Tech. I'm bringing in the Red Raiders. That gets me. That's my presence in Texas, that recruiting hotbed there. There's a lot of tradition there with Texas Tech, and it sets up for, some out of conference games. Maybe they want to continue playing Texas. Maybe they want to get back to playing Texas A&M again. And then when they host those games, that's revenue for my conference, along with the school. So I'm taking Texas Tech with my fourth pick.
With Texas Tech, though, you're going to be getting a trash receiver like Michael Crabtree.
But I also get Patrick Mahomes. When he supports his school, he's supporting my conference.
That is true. Yeah. Texas Tech, they're definitely a big grab, especially in football. I know just a few years back, they were a big, huge force in football, and West Virginia as well, all around. So you've got Baylor, UConn, West Virginia, and Texas Tech. Elrod, what is your fourth round pick in the Pan Am Conference?
Well, in the Pan Am Conference, I told you, and I don't want to be a liar, I told you that my picks may not make sense geographically. So I'm going to stick to this. And I'm going to create one of the greatest rivalries we've ever seen in college football, or maybe any sport for that matter. These two teams have been trying to schedule a game for a long time. It would truly be the Holy War. And some background about this team. When I went to Neyland Stadium a couple years ago to watch this team play UT, I've seen a couple programs take the stadium completely over. Alabama, for instance, Georgia. But no out of conference team, Oregon, Cal, no team took the stadium quite over like BYU. BYU has a national fan base that is probably second to Notre Dame in terms of their ability to travel. They have fans all over the country because of the Mormon religion. So now you set up the holy war between Notre Dame and BYU. And in real life, these two programs have been trying to schedule a game for years. A lot of politics and religion gets in play when you try to do this. So this is going to be a modern day Miami Notre Dame game. This is going to be the convicts versus Catholics, but this time it's the Mormons versus the Catholics. So BYU, you bring in Salt Lake City, you bring in Utah, you bring the West to pan out.
I admit I didn't expect BYU to pop up, and especially not as your number 4th pick, but I definitely like it. I like the BYU Notre Dame concept. I like the fan base. That's actually a pretty solid pick there.
It's hard to be an independent program. I mean, to stand alone from a conference, you're not getting any conference sharing money. You're totally alone. And there's only 4 programs right now that do this. So having Notre Dame, having BYU, they're independent. So they're that power in the Pan Am Conference, 2 truly independent schools. I like the way I'm going.
I don't say this often, Elrod, but they were next on my board too. So a good pick.
Elrod bringing the fire. What is your 5th round pick?
5th round pick. So I told you that it wouldn't make sense geographically. I'm going to the Sunshine State for my next pick. I need to get this South on notice. I need to pick a national championship program that won a national championship 2.5 years ago. I'm going with the Golden Knights of Central Florida. And they are good across all sports, men's basketball, not so much in women's basketball, but they are a program to be reckoned with. They are the Boise State of the Southeast. They are not a Power 5 program, but when you look at the group of 5 schools that can crash the party every year, it's like maybe Central Florida can. So I'm bringing the Orlando market into Pan Am. A huge having BYU having the opportunity to recruit in Florida now. That's great. That is tremendous. So got the mouse, got Mickey Mouse, got UCF, national champions.
I don't know why, but that is such an Elrod pick. I don't know why. So with his 5th pick, Elrod takes the self-proclaimed champions. Rut, what about you? 5th round pick.
This is a weird part of the draft where there's a handful of teams right here in this pocket that I want. I can only guarantee myself 2 of them with these 2 picks. So even though I have them listed in a certain order on my draft board, do I actually draft in that order is a question I'm asking myself right now. I'm going to at least do that with my first pick. With my first pick, I'm also getting an emerging football school and a definite basketball school with a lot of history already built into it. Decent baseball, very popular in the city they're in. A city that will bring money maybe to my conference. Again, I'm kind of sticking to at least 1/2 of the country so far, as far as geographical sense, but I am taking with my 5th pick, the Fighting Penny Hardaways, and I'm taking Memphis here. Again, basketball tradition there, up and coming football program. They're in a city that at least if they're playing well, will support them. So I'm going to take Memphis with my 5th pick. And then my 6th pick, there are 2 schools I'm looking at really heavy here. and I may regret this, but I am going to go out of order of what I have on my draft board here. And I'm going to take, I need a little more presence in football, I feel. And this school will definitely be a presence in football and most definitely a presence in baseball, decent basketball program. But I'm going to take the TCU Horned Frogs here right after Memphis. To give me just a little more balance. So far, I've kept it to, the eastern half of the country. That probably won't hold true the rest of the way, but that's where I am right now. But yeah, I'm going to take Memphis and then I'm going to take TCU. Plus, that gives me more presence in Texas, and there's a natural rivalry there from a geographical standpoint with Texas Tech.
I love the Memphis pick at number 5. You've got Coach Penny Hardaway. That's a +1 point for Rut. You've got he said the up and coming football team. They were pretty decent in the early 2000s when they had like D'Angelo Williams. And then Florida State's current coach, Mike Norvell, really had Memphis on the up and up. So that's an awesome pick there. And TCU, I'm surprised it took this long for them to go. I love that pick as well. Another great football school. So that really adds to where you started out basketball. Now it's kind of shifting. I see some more. I see basketball and football now up here, a little bit of baseball as well. So definitely rounding out. Elrod, 6th pick.
All right, 6th pick for me, 10th overall. I need to get back up toward the Northeast. I have Notre Dame, but outside of that, so far, I really don't have anybody in that Northeast quadrant right now. So I'm going to change that, and I'm going to pick they've been a perennial basketball program. They've also been a proving ground for Tennessee head coaches in football. I'm picking the Cincinnati Bearcats as my 10th overall pick. And giving me the Ohio market. So I have Florida and Ohio, both football hotbeds in recruiting. This would be another natural rival for Notre Dame. They play every now and then. You have Chicago versus Cincinnati. So having me the ability to have another team in the Northeast along with Notre Dame, that will add them a true rival in this Pan Am Conference. So I'm going with the Cincinnati Bearcats as my next pick.
Good pick.
All right. So just to recap real quick, Elrod, you went Notre Dame number 1, and then Oklahoma State, Kansas, BYU, UCF, and Cincinnati. Ruts went Baylor, UConn, West Virginia, Texas Tech, Memphis, and TCU. All right, Elrod, start us off in the 7th round. What you got?
This one, I cannot believe that I'm going to be able to pick this team with the 11th overall pick. This team came out of nowhere in the mid-2000s in college football. They were Central Florida before Central Florida was cool. They are going to be put in a – so if you've got Oklahoma going east, you want to have Boise State in Pan Am. You want to have the Broncos. Now, not a huge market in Boise, not a huge town, but you've got a lot of recent tradition in football. You've got an up-and-coming basketball program. You're going to have – this is going to set up my next couple picks. But Boise State, having the blue turf in the Pan Am Conference. You're adding Brandon to this conference. You got the blue turf. You got Notre Dame. You got Oklahoma State. Shoot them. You got Kansas. You just got a good variety so far. So Boise State's my next pick.
I like the blue turf. Nice pick there. Rut, what you got for number 7, 7th round pick?
Cincinnati was in that pocket of teams I was looking at a second ago, so that was a good pick by Elrod. But another team that was in that pocket that I was afraid wouldn't come back to me, but here they are. I'm going to strengthen yet again my foothold in Texas. So as far as Texas recruiting, I've got Elrod nailed here. Solid football program, solid middle of the pack football program. A lot of tradition on the basketball end. I am taking Houston here. Houston, of course, is becoming a pretty big market. It's a growing city. A lot of opportunities there. Strengthen my foothold in Texas. So I'm going to take Houston with this pick. And then with my next pick, is a pick I'm making for recruiting purposes. I do want to have some sort of presence in Florida. Obviously, you want some sort of presence in Florida. Elrod took UCF. They were on my board, not as high as they were on Elrod's board, apparently. So I'm going to take the next next best thing, especially when it comes to across all sports. This school is a solid baseball team. They have had some pretty good years in football, decent in basketball, but I'm taking USF, University of Southern Florida here with my next pick.
I like it. I like it especially for the baseball aspect in Houston too. Like I said, very decent football school, really. So you've got Baylor 1, UConn, West Virginia, Texas Tech, Memphis, TCU, Houston, and USF. Elrod, 8th pick. What you got?
Well, I want to address that real quick. I don't have a Texas team because what you're seeing with Oklahoma and Texas going into the SEC, with Texas A&M and Texas being the SEC, it's going to be hard to recruit any good talent in Texas when this transition occurs. So that's the reason why there's not a Texas flavor so far in my conference. But my next pick, Kansas is kind of out on an island so far in my conference. There's not really any true. They're basically a spare part in terms of athletic programs so far. I want to have them a true rival inside my conference, and I cannot believe that this school is still on the board. This school is also rumored to be in negotiations with the Big Ten right now because they are an AAU accredited school, and it's another quality Midwest program. They're good in men's basketball. They also have had recent success in football. Iowa State is my next pick, and this gives Kansas a true rival in my conference, and it adds Des Moines to the fold, adds a greater reach in the Midwest. So Iowa State is my next pick.
I thought you were going K-State there.
Yeah.
Not yet.
I marked K-State off my list. I thought that's where you were going.
All right. So recap real quick. You've got Notre Dame, Oklahoma State, Kansas, BYU, Central Florida, Cincinnati, Boise State, and Iowa State. So at this point, both of you guys have your 8 teams minimum, but we're having some fun here. Like, y'all want to keep going some more?
I've got 2 more picks in me.
Got 2 more in him.
I got at least 2 more, if not 4.
All right. Well, we'll go at least 2 more, and then we'll see where we're at there. So, Elrod, not overall selection.
Yeah. Rut stole my thunder. I wanted these 2 schools. Kansas's natural rival is Kansas State. So having Kansas State, having some pretty solid teams that are in rumor and talks right now to join either the Pac-12 or the Big Ten Conference. Kansas State is not AAU accredited, but that adds a fierce rivalry to this conference. So Kansas State is my next pick.
Pretty decent basketball too.
Mm-hmm.
I could see them upsetting Kansas occasionally and being like that, like that little sibling that just nags you all the time, and every once in a while, best you there. So I like it. Rut, number 9.
For my 9th pick and my 10th pick, I'm salivating at this. I didn't want to overdraft it because here's the thing. These 2 picks I'm making together because I would not want one without the other. And when we look at as far as how they are across all sports, these 2 teams probably don't check that box. Hence why I'm taking them as late as they are. But when we look at football, We talk about traditions. We talk about rivalries. You want to talk about one of, if not the most watched football games every year. With my 9th and 10th pick, I'm taking Army and Navy.
Whoa.
Because you talk about the TV deal with that game. It's one of the most watched football games every single year. You add some conference implications to that game on top of everything else. You add that CBS money from that week coming into my conference. You talk about the respect level for the armed forces that we have here. Just for one game a year alone, one game and one sport a year makes this an easy choice to take them together. I'm taking Army and Navy here with my 9th and 10th pick.
Those are huge, huge picks, definitely.
Whoa.
Huge picks. I like it. That was completely not on my radar, so really blew my mind, man.
I didn't know there was going to be a run on the service academy.
Wow.
I'm going to take the Coast Guard now.
All right, so Elrod takes Coast Guard at number 10. All right. Are you taking Coast Guard, or are you going to?
I'm not going to take the Coast Guard, unfortunately.
Okay. What do you got then for us?
Well, I've got 9 teams so far. I'm going to round out my conference with one more team. And I did not have a team so far in California. There needs to be somebody in California. I'm down to 2 teams. It's either going to be Fresno State or San Diego State. And I'm going back and forth on who it should be. And it's got to be San Diego State, because San Diego is a huge market. You've got Kawhi Leonard, home of him. You got a decent baseball program. San Diego State is always in the thick of it in terms of knocking on the door to getting a big time bowl game in football, and decent, very decent men's basketball program, Kawhi Leonard. So I'm going to add a little California flavor with my conference and picking San Diego State.
So recap Elrod's picks, because I believe he said he's tapping out at 10.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have 10 teams in the Pan Am Conference. You've got Notre Dame leading the way, Oklahoma State, Kansas, BYU, Central Florida, Cincinnati, Boise State, and Iowa State, and Kansas State, and San Diego State. So you have a lot of states.
I do.
In your states here. But you've also drafted 10 teams. Do you have any more, or are you going to stop at 10 also?
I'm going to take 2 more.
2 more.
I'm going to give myself a solid 12, set myself up with a good conference championship game, especially when we come to football. What I'm looking at here, I've got some schools on my list. Still got several schools on my list. I'm only going to take 2 of them. There's what I call some of those new money football schools. Your Liberties, your Coastal Carolinas, those newly Division I schools I looked at, but I'm not going to take those. I've got Northern Illinois on my list. That's pretty good all around, but not going to take those. UNLV, the Running Rebs, not going to take them, although they've got some tradition. I could also take Air Force to make it have all the armed forces, but I'm not going to take them either. Here's what I'm going to do. I was afraid Elrod was going to take my next pick, and I was getting really worried. I too wanted to have some sort of presence in California. This will, I haven't gone west of Texas yet until this pick, but I am going to take Fresno State to give myself some room here in California. They won a baseball national championship a couple years ago. They've produced a couple top level quarterbacks with their football team. They can be competitive on the football side. Plus, like I said, there's that foothold there in California. And my last pick, I'm going even farther west. There's a lot of reasons to do this.
I knew it. I was gonna do this. I know which way you're going.
Here's the thing: if you've got to travel to an away game, where better to travel than Hawaii? And when you look at Hawaii, especially on the football end of things, definitely in the last decade, Hawaii's starting to turn out some NFL players pretty regularly. Marcus Mariota, you've got Tua. There have been some great linebackers that have come out of Hawaii. I think Hawaii's turning into a low key, kind of hot football bed when you're looking at recruiting. Um, like I said, if you're going to travel for an away game, who wouldn't want to go to Hawaii? And as commissioner of this league, I feel that I need to go scope out my schools on the regular. And my favorite place in the entire world is Hawaii. So I'm taking the Warriors here.
Timeout. Can I call a timeout?
That's
Sure.
such a rut.
What's your travel budget in your conference, right? Who's going to pay for the air flight from Annapolis, Maryland, the Naval Academy, to Hawaii? You going to pay that? Who's paying that bill?
CBS from the Army Navy game.
I don't even think that would pay that flight. That's a long flight, my friend. Morgantown, West Virginia to Hawaii. That's going to be a fun trip.
Went from Nashville, Tennessee to Hawaii. It can be done.
Long trip.
I like the picks. I like the Fresno State pick. That was on my radar. And Hawaii was definitely on my radar. I was waiting for somebody to take that. So Rut finishes with 12 picks. Baylor, UConn, West Virginia, Texas Tech, Memphis, Penny Hardaway University, TCU, Houston, USF, Army and Navy, Fresno State, and Hawaii. So we've got Elrod with 10 teams, Rut with 12 teams. And now we need to kind of focus a little bit of how is this going to work? You guys got y'all's teams. I think everybody's happy with the teams they got. So we need to see how this conference is really going to work out. And I'm looking for some like really interesting ideas. I want to see if there's anything that's going to be like special to y'all's conference. How are these games going to be played? How do you determine the championship games? Just anything. Definitely the more creative, the better. It's what I'm looking for. So Elrod, I'll give you the option if you want to go first or if you want to defer.
I will go first. I've already structured my conference. I got my championship games nailed down, and I can talk about it. 10-team conference. Pan Am then, Pan Am now, Pan Am forever. That's the motto. I've got my conference structured in two divisions: the Saints and the Sinners. The Saints are Notre Dame, BYU, Boise State, San Diego State, and Cincinnati. That's the Saints. The Sinners are those scoundrels down in Orlando at Central Florida. Oklahoma State, because Mike Gundy and the mullet, he's a sinner for having a mullet like that. So he's in the center division. Iowa State, Kansas, Kansas, just because, Kansas cheats in men's basketball. So they're bad. So they are in the centers division. In football, the championship game will feature the top overall team from the Saints, top overall team from the Sinners. It will rotate between two different host cities. The first year, Soldier Field in Chicago will host the championship game, centrally located for these Midwestern teams. And it will alternate for the Western teams. And next year, Las Vegas, the Raiders Stadium, will host the championship game the year following that. For the men's basketball and women's basketball championships, Las Vegas will host the first year, and the United Center will host the following year. So I'm putting my base of operations in two cities to accommodate my wide-ranging conference in Las Vegas, growing city, and Chicago. The Saints and the Sinners. So that's pretty much it. That's how I have structured this conference.
I
Like it? You like the idea?
I like the Saints and Sinners. It reminds me of King of the Hill when Hank wins a chance to throw a football through an Alamo beer can for a chance at $1 million, and they go down to it's in New Orleans, and Bill's I think it's his cousin. He was talking to Hank about one of the Cowboys players. I can't remember who it was. Shoot, I can't remember. Anywho, his Bill's cousin said that he's more familiar with, it was something with the Saints player, I think. They say he's more familiar with Sinners than Saints or something like that. It's funny. That just reminded me of that. But
wait a minute, right? How did none of us choose Louisiana Monroe, or is it just Lafayette? How did we not go down in the Cajun country? Neither one of us did that.
And I think y'all are okay with that.
Yeah.
Okay, Rut. Sorry for the King of the Hill ramble. I don't have any Forrest Gump reference, but I got a King of the Hill in, so
There we go.
that's good enough for me. All right, I need to know, pretty much the same thing as Elrod. Elrod's got this pretty much all figured out. What about you? What's some of the interesting concepts behind your conference?
Before I get into mine, Elrod, I've never heard of a conference that their base of operations are in two cities that none of their schools are represented in that state. You have no schools in Nevada or Illinois.
They're centrally located, and that adds the market to these teams. So I don't have to choose a crappy Nevada team or UNLV, but what I do is I can get their market because I put my game there.
Well, my divisions, I too will have two divisions. Also, I've never heard of a 10-team conference having a championship game. That's beside the point there. That's why I went with 12 teams. I lucked out with my conference. You can draw a line right down the middle. I've got a simple East and West concept. The West concept will consist, the Western division will consist of my Texas teams of Baylor, Texas Tech, TCU, Houston, Fresno State, and Hawaii also get thrown in on that Western end. And then on the East end are my East Coast schools. UConn, West Virginia, Memphis, South Florida, Army and Navy will all be in the East. I do want to keep Army and Navy in the same conference or in the same division. That guarantees that game is going to get played every year, and I'm going to get that CBS money. There will be a conference championship, which will take place where I am best represented in Texas. What better place to have it than the biggest venue in the entire world, in Jerry's World in Dallas, every single year. We're in a state that I actually am well represented in Texas. I don't know as far as basketball and baseball and anything else as far as my scheduling goes, but I would have scheduling rules for the football side of things. You play every team in your division once, and you play 3 teams from the other division on a rotating basis. There is no permanent rival. So that gives you 8 games. Your 4 other non-conference games you're going to play every year. You're allowed to play 1 school that is not a D1 school for your homecoming. You're allowed to play 1 school that's not a Power 5 school. Or I guess Power 4 now. We're not counting Big 12, but you got to have 2 non-conference games against Power 4 opponents, with at least one of them being at home, and you're giving some of that gate to your conference. So, I mean, that guarantees you're going to get big time matchups. You can still have this Texas Tech playing your Texas and your Texas A&Ms on a regular basis if they choose to schedule that. You can still get Air Force playing Army and Navy. You can still have South Florida playing UCF. Memphis can still, mess around and play Tennessee, Vanderbilt, those sort of things. You still get some good matchups, even non-conference school, with those rules in place. And I thought of it took me this whole show, but I came up with a name for my conference because I didn't know we were naming them. Mine's going to be the really untraditional conference, otherwise known as the RUT. So,
I like it.
Ha ha ha.
All right. To keep it short and sweet, my follow-up question is going to be for both of y'all. It's the same question, and I'm going to start with Elrod. I want, usually when you think of all these big conferences like we have, like the SEC, ACC, blah, blah, blah. When you look at the teams from top to bottom, even though every team on the list isn't like take the ACC, for example, you've got some of your bigger schools, but not every school on the list is a powerhouse. Even look at SEC, Vanderbilt's certainly not a huge powerhouse. They're good, but nobody fears Vanderbilt for a football championship or something. But they work together great, so they have a lot of chemistry when you look at the schools in the conference. So I want to know, does the team have good chemistry, and what makes the teams have good chemistry? So what makes your conference have good chemistry? How are these teams all going to work together to make a great conference?
Well, you have a lot of familiar faces in my conference. If you look at it, I've got 4 teams from the Big 12. So they already have a cohesion to them. Well, separate and apart from them, Notre Dame and BYU, very similar institutions. I mean, they may be a different subset of Christianity, but Notre Dame and BYU have been itching to play one another for a long time. They just can't get the scheduling right. Both have great fan bases and national brands. BYU has their own network. It's hard to find on a provider list, but Notre Dame is on Channel 4 every weekend. So NBC can be my network. I can just piggyback off Notre Dame's contract. Bringing San Diego State, bringing in Cincinnati, Boise State, in Central Florida. All these teams are they've been in the limelight. These are not, no disrespect to Army or Navy, but they're only in the national spotlight for one time a year, for one game. No disrespect to them, but they are not perennial powerhouses. They are not playing in BCS bowls every year. So you've got 4 teams. To answer your question, you got 4 natural teams from the Big 12. You got Notre Dame, BYU that have a long history. They're itching to play one another, and you've got other teams that have been in the limelight before. So this conference will have good cohesion.
All right, Rut, he kind of took a shot at your Army and Navy, but we know Army and Navy, they have good chemistry together. They fight against each other, but they do join together to fight the bad guys too. What about your team though? You've got 12 instead of 10. How are all these 12 teams going to come together to make like a conference that has a lot of chemistry?
Just to address that other point first, I said when I made the pick, Army Navy was for one game. That's a lot of CBS money. That's a lot of eyes on my conference. Plus, there's that natural fondness for the armed services that people will be drawn to. There's a lot of familiarity between my schools as well. I've got 4 teams as well coming out of the Big 12. I've got 4 teams in Texas that are very familiar with each other. You've got Houston and Memphis, who have both been in Conference USA. They know each other well. When you look at these other schools, UConn, they know these teams from the basketball floor. They know Baylor, they know West Virginia, they know Memphis. I feel like it would mesh really well. There are some fringe teams here. Army and Navy, Navy's had competitive football teams. There haven't been BCS contenders, but Elrod's got some people on his list that haven't been at BCS contenders either. You know, Fresno State and Hawaii, when we're looking at purely a football perspective, maybe not so much, but they're going to compete in other areas. I feel like each one of these teams, at least in some sport, most of them multiple sports, there's going to be a lot of competition. There's the natural rivalry with my Texas schools, natural rivalries with these guys that have played each other before. USF also falls into that Conference USA with Houston and Memphis. A lot of familiarity, if I could spit it out, and yeah, I think it would mesh really well, and you get some interesting matchups you've never seen before. Have you ever seen Memphis versus Hawaii? I haven't. Maybe they don't mesh well, but maybe they do. And it's cool to watch for the first. I mean, that's a random lower tier bowl game, but now you're going to get it, 3 out of every 6 years.
Oh, yeah, this is going to be a great matchup. Army versus Hawaii. You'll find this on PAX television at 3 o'clock in the morning with all the infomercials. It's going to be great. It's going to be fun for the whole family.
It might be.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to.
It's going to be right after Bob Ross.
Hey, I love Bob Ross.
I'm looking forward to Cincinnati and San Diego State myself.
Hey, that's going to be a barn burner, I tell you.
If you mean to tell me that I can watch Bob Ross at 2 a.m. and then turn around and watch Hawaii and Navy play at 3 a.m., I'm up. I'm watching those. Before we get into the closing arguments, I just want to take a second and say that, like, both of you guys have done a great job with your schools. It isn't exactly easy to, draft this. And there's been a whole lot more thought behind this than I expected. So I'm definitely impressed with this. So you guys are going to make this tough on me because y'all both done a great job. That being said, we're going to wrap it up. And Elrod, give me your closing argument why your conference is better. And there's probably going to be a lot of weight on these closing arguments because I don't know where to go with this.
Well, I'm going to start off with the obvious for my conference. There is one team, the only team that has been drafted tonight that could get an instant invitation to the SEC or any other conference that they wanted to be in is Notre Dame. They are a cash cow. They are one of the brand names in sports, not just college football, not just college athletics, but any sport. Notre Dame is you either love this program or you hate them. There is no middle ground with Notre Dame. The green, those solid gold helmets, brand. So you have a true flagship of a conference. Ruts, the RUT conference truly doesn't have that, does not have a bell cow. When you look at the other teams in the conference, you have Kansas. Kansas versus Notre Dame in men's basketball is going to be a tremendous battle. You have credibility with Kansas. You got national championships. You got Rock Chalk Jayhawk Fog Allen. You have Matt Gundy's mullet in the conference. He's going to be a character at Pan Am Media Days in Las Vegas when he rolls in with his mullet. Having the chance to have BYU versus Notre Dame, that could be one of the great rivalries in men's basketball, and truly for football. Having that Y on their helmets versus those solid gold helmets in South Bend and Provo, Utah, having this sunset and the mountains in the background, it's going to be truly remarkable. Having Notre Dame travel to Boise State on the blue turf, that is going to be a great sight to see every other year. You add in Kansas State versus Kansas, Cincinnati, these are another difference between my conference and Rut's conference. My media, if everything is geared toward television contracts and trying to get cities that have a big media presence, having Cincinnati, Ohio, having San Diego, having Chicago with Notre Dame, having BYU with Salt Lake City in the background, having Orlando. Got huge media markets, which means big money. And having Notre Dame anchoring my conference along with these big time cities, huge. I didn't want to have 12 teams because I thought adding 2 more would just dilute the 10 and a half. No disrespect to Rut's conference, but having Army, Navy, and Hawaii will dilute some of his better teams and better programs. So top to bottom, I think that Notre Dame is basically 5 or 6 schools. You could say that the value of Notre Dame is truly five to six institutions on this list. Not to mention the natural rivalries I could foster in the conference, having the money and having the chance. Boise State, Notre Dame, Oklahoma State, even BYU this past season, and Central Florida have been in the discussion for the college football playoff in the last 5 years, and even Iowa State last year until they faltered late. So I have a great conference top to bottom. I've got the money, I got the prestige, I got Notre Dame. He doesn't, I do, I win.
Oh gosh. You definitely got you got money. You've got Notre Dame. Prestige, some. I don't know how much prestige like San Diego State gives you or K-State, but
And Kawhi Leonard, baby. Kawhi Leonard.
You got some of that new money.
Rashard Penny.
Right. Tell me why your conference is better.
Here's the thing. What has been wrong with the Pac-12 for years, or not the Pac-12, the Big 12 in a lot of people's eyes, is it's top heavy, not top to bottom. Elrod Pan Am Conference is top heavy. It's Notre Dame, and unless you're talking basketball, that's it for the most part. Oklahoma State, when you look at my conference, here are the highlights of what my conference offers that Elrod's doesn't, and the reason my conference is better. First of all, we're going to have the top rated football game every single year. You can give me Notre Dame, BYU. That's cool. That intrigues me. I want to watch it. Guess what? More people are going to watch Army, Navy. They are. But here are my stronger points. First of all, I have a recruiting footprint in every big market other than maybe Ohio. Texas, I've got locked down. Elrod has no Texas presence. I have a presence in Florida. I have a presence in California. So does Elrod. But I've got that Texas locked down. I've got this new pipeline of Hawaii on lockdown. And who doesn't want to go to Hawaii? But here's the strongest reason of why two strongest reasons why mine is a better conference. First of all, look at any sport you want to look at when you look at the Capital One sports that we've discussed in our tournament this year. I have a national championship, somebody that can make a run in a national championship in every single sport. Elrod really doesn't. Football is probably, Elrod's got Notre Dame, and out of this entire list, when it comes to football, Notre Dame has that best shot. But, in the last 10 years, Baylor's been in that picture. Texas Tech has been in that picture. West Virginia's knocked on the door of that picture. TCU's knocked on the door of that picture. Football's probably my weakest. But there's somebody that could make a run to a national championship. You want to look at basketball, men's basketball. I've got Baylor. I've got UConn. I've got West Virginia. I've got Texas Tech. I've got Memphis. I've got Houston. You want to look at women's basketball? I have UConn. I have Baylor. What else do you need? Let's look at baseball. I've got Baylor. I've got Texas Tech. I've got Houston. I've got TCU. I've got Fresno State, who was a national champion a couple years ago. In every single sport, I've got a team that can make a run at a national championship. Obviously, teams change, programs change, but judging by what we have now, looking at these teams coming in the next 10 years, I've got somebody that can make a run at a championship in every single sport. And something else I have that Elrod doesn't. I've got a lot of parity. Even women's basketball, UConn is arguably, maybe not so arguably, the greatest women's program ever. But then the same conference as Baylor, somebody's going to challenge them for that conference crown every year. Football, there's going to be a dogfight with your Baylors, your West Virginias, Texas Tech, of who's going to win. Men's basketball, all those teams could make a run. I mean, I've got 4 teams that can make a run at the Final Four, much less a conference championship. I've got 4 teams that could go to Omaha in baseball. When you look at all sports, I have competition, I have top dogs, and I have, again, the highest rated football game every single year. Army and Navy bring nothing to my conference except 1 week a year, but that's going to make up for all those travel plans to Honolulu and back for all the. So I feel the RUT is in good shape to be the next Power 5 conference.
Hawaii and parity, 2 words never spoken in the same sentence until tonight. And I just want to let you know, Bennett, he said some of his teams have been close to national championship in football. One of mine have actually won a national championship in the last 3 years with UCF. Count them. They got the banner, baby.
Bennett, take that argument into consideration. Keep that fresh on your mind when you make decisions.
Well, we've got Pan Am Conference and the RUT Conference. This has been great. Like, just listening to you two guys come up with all this and making y'all's conference. This has been interesting for sure. Just to sit back and take it all in. This is the tough part, though. How I was going to score this was a little bit different than what we usually do. I know both of you guys like to make your own list and kind of grade off of y'all's list.
Or cheat off Ranker.
Or cheat off Ranker. I didn't do that. I didn't go to Ranker. I didn't make a list of my conference to see who picked most off my conference. There was a few things that I was looking for. Kind of like, at the end of the season, they give out the awards in college football, basketball, whatever. You have your end of the year awards. This is going to be like our end of the episode awards that I'm going to hand out. And whoever has the most awards is going to get the championship ring, which will be the winner of tonight's show. So first, best rivalry. I was intrigued with the Notre Dame BYU rivalry there. I think that's a very interesting take, but it's something that we haven't really seen yet, so I'm not sure how it would play out. I think from all of this, there's a couple other good rivalries, but the one that I personally feel is the best rivalry on this list is Army Navy. So best rivalry goes to Rut. So Rut has 1 point. Rut also has 2 imaginary points for what was it? Penny Hardaway and also Memphis for Mike Norvell. So I'll give him that point too. Second was I was looking for which one of these schools has the best tradition. Who's going to bring the tradition to their conference, who's, going to be the one who lays down the framework, the foundation. And I think of these schools, the best tradition is Notre Dame. So Elrod gets that. So 1-1. Next was kind of like your best bowl game or your trophy game. You have a lot of these like in school rivalry games where they hand out a trophy, blah, blah, blah. Or even just like how Texas and Oklahoma has like the Red River Showdown or whatever you want to call it. I think the one that would be the best, the one that would generate the most buzz, the most money, blah, 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 whatever you want to say, would be Army and Notre Dame. That's your best bowl game, your trophy game there. So that goes to Rut as well. So 2-1 for Rut. Then me, I like to be creative. I like to kind of think outside of the box, you know. So I was kind of looking at this from that perspective, and I really liked one of these conferences, how they're going to lay down their kind of their how that's all structured. And for most creative, I went with Elrod. I like the Sinners versus Saints, how you're going to have it in Las Vegas and you're going to have it in Chicago. I thought that was really good. I do like the Notre Dame BYU thing that goes well with it. I thought that was all tied in very well. Very creative. You had the Pan Am name right off the bat. So a lot of that stuff stuck out. So I gave that to Elrod. Then my what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4. My fifth. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. My fifth point. Sorry, I can't read my own writing. Would be like, which one of these conferences has the best depth? Who has the best overall teams, top to bottom? And for that, I'm going to go with Rut. I think he's got the best teams overall, top to bottom, outside of just maybe one or two like powerhouses. They're up top to bottom. It's more of a solid. So some of the things that I'm looking at, you know, of course, Elrod's got Notre Dame. He said he's got the money, you know, he's got his he's got all his plans here. My one knock on it is, like, you start out strong, you got Notre Dame, Oklahoma State, Kansas, and BYU. You start out really, really strong, but then when it gets down to like Iowa State, K-State, San Diego State, I appreciate what you're doing. I know you're trying to lay down in key cities, but I just don't know how well they're going to stand up to some of these other teams. So you start out strong and it kind of tapers. So it is a little bit top heavy, but I do get where you're coming from with it. And for Rut, I like a lot of these schools and how well they're represented in each sport. How you said, you know, a lot of these could make a run at a championship in each sport. The only thing I'm not sure about is how the heck we're going to get, you know, Memphis all the way out to Hawaii and this and that. How we're going to ship these people out to Hawaii every other weekend or this or that. So that part, I'm not sure about the Hawaii. I like the pick. It was definitely on my list in my head that I was thinking about earlier today, but I'm just not sure how it would actually work. But
if the whack can do it, the Rut can do it.
that's true. I'd have to see it. But at the end of the day, my very last one is the championship potential. Which one of these conferences has the best potential to bring home a championship in one sport, two sports, three sports, whatever? And the one that I feel is a little bit better represented is the RUT conference, with, you know, Baylor and UConn for basketball, West Virginia, Texas Tech, Memphis. You've even got, you know, Fresno State in there too for baseball and football. I mean, you've got some teams that you don't have a Notre Dame or even like a Oklahoma State, but you've got teams here that are definitely, you know, on the up and up, and they'll be competitive. So by nose, I think Rut's team would have a better championship potential, which would give Rut 4 wins to Elrod's 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2. Best tradition, most creative. Yep. So going off of my end of this episode awards, I've got to give it to Rut, even though I really do like the creativity behind Elrod's. I just don't think they have. I don't think they have the competitiveness to compete.
You know what, Bennett? Commissioner Snow does not like your selection. Cornelius Snow does not approve of your selection.
Cornelius Snow.
Yeah. Ain't that his name?
Who are you talking about?
The Hunger Games guy.
Oh, it's been too long since I've seen
Oh
that.
shoot, I don't know.
All I remember is
It's
the
been so
whistle,
long.
the little whistle noise, and her yelling "PETA" over and over. PETA.
That's about all I remember.
So,
And then they run around in the woods.
and Woody Harrelson
Mm,
and
Yeah.
Lenny Kravitz.
Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah, Lenny Kravitz, but he died, so you know.
He did. He did.
All right. Well, with that being said, Rut wins. Your next Power 5 conference, taking the place of the Big 12. We'll still probably lose to the SEC in football, but I like our chances in other sports. And Notre Dame, this just in. Notre Dame has left the Pan Am because they were in better shape independently. All right. There's that breaking news. So in that case, go OK State. But we hope you guys have enjoyed this. Obviously, it's kind of a different. Everybody's talking about Texas and Oklahoma. That's the premise where this thing started. But we took it another direction. Gave you another point to look at in that whole fiasco. And you know, us living close to Nashville, in a few years, we might get to see. Longhorns and the Sooners come destroy Vanderbilt if we wanted to. So that's kind of cool.
Good.
Oh, Texas lost to Kansas in football, which Vanderbilt's a little bit better than Kansas is. God knows.
Right now, they're pretty close. In the last decade, yes, Vanderbilt. But
Texas has also won the national championship before.
They have. They have. Hook 'em.
Ooh.
Horns down. Horns down, baby.
Do you think if Texas comes to Nashville, Vince Young comes back to Nashville?
Is he going to buy like Cheesecake Factory for everybody again and go broke?
is he still selling
old
sausages or whatever he was doing? Wasn't he selling like
Probably.
branded sausages with his name on them or something?
That seems like a Vince Young thing.
I know he had some sort of like ambassador job at the University of Texas for a while, but I think that's over with.
Vince Young, boys and girls, the true definition of one game winning you millions of dollars.
Yes.
That Rose Bowl game won him millions of dollars by making him the number 3 pick. And it didn't work out. I think he gets a bad rap, though. He was a winner. He won games.
He also had a lot of talent around him, too.
Still won games. So, which was more than the next couple quarterbacks for the Titans could say.
I think he had some good talent, though, even at the pro level.
Yeah.
He won some games. It just, the mental thing wasn't there. Once he started, he wasn't used to losing. He'd never lost, going back to high school. So, I don't know. Just didn't have the mentality for it.
I will say, though, he was really good on Madden his rookie year before he ever played in the NFL. So, all right, guys, with that, we'll wrap up our conference realignment episode. We hope you all enjoyed. We'll be back next week with another topic. Don't know what it'll be. Sure, it'll be entertaining. Make sure, guys, time is coming. Time is of the essence. Make sure podcastawards.com, entertainment category, people's choice category, go vote, convince me. Send us some proof through social media that you did so. And who knows, there might be something, you might be entered in to win something. Don't know what yet, but maybe it'll be something worth at least $1 or $2. And it'll be something you didn't already have. So Bennett, Elrod, any parting words?
And then forever, baby. That's it. No, Notre Dame and I are going to go crying. Not really, but we'll see.
I think the Pan Am was about as short-lived as the XFL.
He hates me.
Great concept, but it just didn't pan out this time.
And the Rock's bringing it back though.
That's right.
There
2023.
we go.
All right, guys. We will see you all next week. For Mr. Bennett, for Mr. Elrod, for myself. Until next time. Peace.